Live from the studios of 106.7 My Talker Radio, it's Curtis Wright on the beat.
We're back live here on the beat. I'm Curtis Wright, and it's 7:05, hour number 2. 7:05 across southeastern North Carolina on the new 106.7 FM My Talker Radio. We, of course, every Monday are joined at 7 o'clock by our good friend, Thomas Vass, and this is Cape Fear Capital Connections. Good morning, sir.
Hey, Curtis. It's good to be with you.
Some news coming out the end of last week, and the headline is from the News and Observer from their business section, crowdfunding bill endorsed by the Senate committee. It was endorsed unanimously out of committee. This bill that's been sitting there since last year, that's House Bill 680. It's already been passed by the House. The word is this is absolutely going to become law, said Mark Easley. He's a Triangle an angel investor. The president and CEO of the North Carolina Technology Association, also a co-chair of the Finance Committee, said this will be becoming law. So it looks like it's going to come out of the short session and be approved.
Two really important points about this piece of legislation. One, the accredited investor crowdfunding is under Title II of the Jobs Act, and Title III, which this bill addresses, is the non-accredited, which allows non-wealthy people, less than $200,000 of income or less than $1 million of assets, non-wealthy people to invest in North Carolina companies. So that's point one, which is that it's a non-accredited investor fund or opportunity to fund. And then opportunity number two is it embraces what we need in North Carolina, which is called intrastate funding, or allows North Carolina citizens to invest in North Carolina companies being exempt from the federal securities laws. So that's a big step forward. That part about intrastate funding is an important part. So there's two parts to that are important.
Well, what for the non-accredited investor, the cap here is $2,000 each. I'm not sure if that will be moved up in coming years. I didn't know if that was in the bill, but you've often mentioned about Georgia. I think theirs is $10,000. Is it not?
That's correct. And there's lots of different regulatory constraints on what the individual non-accredited investor can do. And part of the problem that I have with this law that I think is backwards a little bit anyways is that they write into the law itself regulations that would be a lot better served by allowing our Secretary of State to oversee the implementation of that. So I think that the bill itself contains regulatory overkill written into the law. It should be, it should have been, it would have been a lot better served, and that's what the people in Georgia did. This bill was modeled after Georgia and after some of the others. It's actually like a uniform state law that many folks in different states adopted and just incorporated into their own state's law. The best part about this legislation, though, is that it does contain the intrastate exemption from the federal law.
Now, does that mean then someone intrastate, intrastate can go out and advertise to attract those non-accredited investors?
Actually, there's a really bizarre trigger mechanism. There's something really strange. Under Title II, which is accredited investor crowdfunding, you can solicit, that's Reg D 506C, you can solicit accredited investors. Under Title III, which is non-accredited, you can't solicit, you can't market. So
well, wait a second, though, but this bill is a North Carolina bill.
Right.
Does it exempt us from that?
No.
So no. How are these people going to find these people? I mean,
it's
so it's not we're not exempt.
Well,
so a company, if I wanted to start a new company,
right,
and I wanted to go out and get a non-accredited investors, I wanted to do crowdfunding,
right.
How are they going to find me if I can't talk to anybody or let them know that I'm doing it?
It's a serious flaw in the law. It's a serious flaw, and it doesn't really move the ball down the field very far.
Well, in Georgia, though, they're exempt from it.
No,
no.
It's nothing is logical about what we're talking about. It's terribly.
So even in Georgia, they can't do it.
That's correct. Under Title III, which is non-accredited crowdfunding, you cannot go out and solicit. You can't go out and market your offering. So it's about
interstate or intrastate, neither.
Either one.
So these websites that are out there, how are they operating then?
Well,
are they only operating to attract accredited investors?
There's two parts that we've got to disentangle. The websites are called portals under Title III. Those are regulated by the SEC. We don't have any ability under the SEC rules for portals to affect the SEC law or the federal law. So you've got to disentangle the whole notion of non-accredited websites, crowdfunding websites, from the issue of intrastate offering, which is North Carolina citizens investing in North Carolina law. There's two very big separate parts of the law.
Now I'm still confused.
Okay.
In the United States today, no matter the 17 states that have passed laws, we will be, I guess 15 states, will become the 16th state that has passed crowdfunding bills.
Right.
No one is allowed to go out and solicit non-accredited investors.
Under Title III, that's correct. You cannot.
Crowdfunding then in the United States, no matter these bills passing, is only at this point is allowed to go out and solicit accredited investors.
For public marketing, that's true.
So, but that's already allowed under the law, without crowdfunding bills.
No, no.
Well, what's a private? When you do private partnerships, as I did when I was a licensed investment advisor,
right?
We were out soliciting that to accredited investors only.
You might have been doing public solicitation. That's probably true. I can't vouch for it. I can tell you that under Title II, which is accredited investor crowdfunding, which we call Reg D 506C, which allows, it's the C part, the subsection C, which allows public solicitation. Reg D 506B, which is private placements as it used to be.
Right, private placements.
Does not allow public solicitation.
So that's gone now?
No, you can still do a Reg B. You can still do a Reg B under Title II. This is very confusing for our listeners, but I'll just go through it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm trying to boil this down. So what's the point? What's the word crowdfunding? What does it truly mean? Crowdfunding was to go out and solicit a large group of people to get involved. Well, what you're saying is the only way you can do it is under the SEC rules. You can go out and solicit people, but you can only go out and solicit people who are accredited investors, which we already can do.
Well, there's two major pieces of legislation that are in play. There's Title II of the Jobs Act, which is accredited investor, and there's Title III of the Jobs Act, which is non-accredited.
Okay, hold it. Title III, non-accredited investors. Let's just focus on that. How are non-accredited investors going to find out about opportunities if you cannot go out and advertise or solicit?
That's a real problem. It's a flaw.
That's in the national bill.
That's right. It's a flaw in the law.
So it's worthless.
Well, it's not worthless. We took North Carolina.
So what do you do? Just wink and nod at people at a cocktail party or something?
Yes. Well, that's about what you're. That's about what it.
Jeez.
But wait.
Okay.
There's some value. There's some value to what happened in North Carolina if it passes. The value is that it takes the ball and it moves it a little teeny, like it's a 3-yard gain. That's just a 3-yard gain right up the middle. And the gain is that you get to have North Carolina residents invest in North Carolina companies exempt from the SEC.
But the reality is, I got to go, holy smokes, I just read an article. I really like that Thomas Vass guy in Wilmington, North Carolina. I'm going to call him up and see if he'll take my $2,000. That's the only way legally it can happen.
That's right.
Because Thomas Vass can't say, I'm looking for people in an article. That's illegal.
That would be a problem.
You gotta love government. We'll be back with Thomas Vass. We have lots to talk about today here on Cape Fear Capital Connections.
Curtis Wright on the beat.
Can you think of anything more American?
This is the new 106.7 My Talker Radio.
Okay, we're back live here on The Beat. I'm Curtis Wright with Thomas Vass. This is Keep Your Capital Connections. And I know I took us a little off maybe track, but I think that's the most important thing we could talk about is this bill. I mean, finally, we've been talking about crowdfunding. We've been talking about the bill, and I know we want to get on to GE. I'm not quite sure, whereas, this entire preamble to this bill talks about democratizing funding for startups, and startups are so important, and this and that, but it looks like that bankers who are more interested in small business loans and venture capitalists seem to have manipulated the process here. I just, as someone still, I know you've been coaching me on this off mic, and I still don't get it. I don't see any value to this at all, because right now I could just do a private placement. I could go out and advertise, and I can get accredited investors and raise money. I just don't understand. It's like people wandering in the desert with $2,000 in their pocket. How are they ever going to find startups?
Right.
This is total. To me, it's. I know you say it's at least, but it's not a crowdfunding bill.
Well, it's
called. It looks to me like a bill to protect the status quo.
It's called internal. Its text is called crowdfunding, and there's an awful lot of kind of fluff going on about what crowdfunding is, and it's very complicated. I think the best thing to do, Curtis, and I'll just mention this, I really believe that this bill is one step that the General Assembly has taken, and that we're going to have to improve this bill. It's got some flaws in it, but it's a step forward, and I hope that at some point in the future you and I can maybe talk with
we get some folks on here from the committee. Now, I do want everybody to know something that's probably the dirty little secret that people don't know about this bill. The bill would provide a tax credit to insurance companies that bankroll community development entities. Wow, that's buried in the bill. And this, or I should actually say to folks, this bill was tacked onto that initiative. It makes it sound like this was tacked on. No, this bill to give insurance companies an ability to invest or provide loans that would be with interest up to $7 million to small businesses in distressed and rural counties. Actually, this bill was tacked onto it for approval. In other words, people were pushing this bill of bankrolling community development entities with a new tax credit, targeted tax credit, the things that the Republicans said they were going to end, and then they tacked this bill onto it.
Right. Exactly.
The thing that they said that they would never do because Democrats used to do that.
Right.
So, it's sad that this has kind of gone this way.
Well, we're going to have to.
We'll get a committee member on.
Yeah, we're going to have to make an improvement to the law if it gets passed.
Big announcement, and I know we're off track. We're not going to be able to get to all of this, but General Electric announced a $30 billion, I guess, order.
Yes,
they got.
They got a new order last week, and the thing that we should do to help our listeners is talk about. This is for the plant at Castle Hayne that makes jet engines. And we need to talk about how does that impact, how does that affect and benefit the Cape Fear regional economy. In other words, if you inject $30 billion into the economy, what happens? What happens here? And
now, can I ask you a question on this?
Sure.
Because I'm looking at your notes here. They invested more than $17 million in machinery and equipment in the plan in 2013. Is the $30 billion additional business, or is it backfill for business that is cycling through?
It's orders that will be filled in the next 3 to 5 years. In other words, it's important for a lot of different reasons, but one of the reasons it's important is because that means that plant up there in Castle Hayne is going to have a lot of work for the next 3 to 5 years.
Okay.
The $17 million capital investment, the reason I put that in our story today is that they hired an additional 30 workers by investing $17 million. And the thing that I want to talk about in this Cape Fear Capital Connection is when you have capital invested in a company, not such a big one like General Electric, but in little companies, they add workers. And so what we can see with General Electric is that on $17 million, investment. They hired 30 workers, and that works out to around $560,000 per job up there in Castle Hayne. That's capital intensive. In other words, when you invest that amount of dollars to create jobs, that's an incredible capitally intensive process. And we recall that last week we talked about the fact that when you have automated machinery, which they've got up there, beautiful machinery, and that's what they bought, a lot of this 3D machinery. When you do that, the job kick, the job added, is not as great as it used to be under the old labor intensive, but the jobs that are added, those 30 jobs, were terrific jobs, and so it's $560,000 per job that they invested. And that's going to that is in them getting ready to do this production over the next 3 to 5 years with this $30 billion order.
Now, two questions that I have, only because I've been here 20 years, and these are the same questions that never seem to quite get answered. Number one, of the $17 million of additional equipment, did any of that come from North Carolina?
It did, in fact, and this is a really important point. Internal to the supply chain of GE, internal, they have their own supply chain in North Carolina. GE Aviation spends in North Carolina $300 million a year, some of which is in their other GE plants and some of which is outside their plants. And the point that I would make to you, the part that we should be doing, the gap, the flaw, the problem that we've got in our economic strategy, is we should be doing everything that we can to get GE to be spending more of that $300 million on small technology companies in the 7 counties of Cape Fear. A lot of those little companies are not here in New Hanover. A lot of them are up there in Cumberland. And those companies, in order to be eligible, in order to participate, in order to meet the criteria for General Electric supply chain, they need capital to expand. They need to be able to meet the criteria to be a supplier to General Electric. We're missing out on that part.
Now, the 30 jobs, my second question. Are they 30 jobs from California?
No,
or are they
here.
30 jobs from here?
They're 30 jobs from here. So the way that we would look at that is in the internal supply chain in North Carolina, GE, in addition to the 600 workers up there in Castle Hayne, GE employs another 1,500 workers in North Carolina that service and supply their own plant in Castle Hayne. So that's an internal supply chain. In addition to that, GE's spending in North Carolina is responsible for another 1,000 jobs, 1,000 jobs in North Carolina as a result, and those are in the small companies. We should do everything we can to beef that up. That should be around 5,000 jobs. That should be around 10,000 jobs. If we were doing a good job in economic strategy, we would recognize that GE is a powerhouse, and we should be getting our small companies plugged into GE. We would need, the companies up there in Cumberland would need a capital fund of about $50 million every 3 years to meet the requirements of GE.
So they can expand, so GE can expand, and all that expansion would stay intrastate.
Right, exactly right. That's the goal of economic strategy, is to increase the strength of the regional economy by beefing up capital investments in small technology companies. A lot of those companies are up there in Fayetteville, and they're their search and detection navigation.
Now, yeah, we're just about out of time. Now, you wanted to make a mention about the 13th Annual North Carolina Defense and Economic Development Trade Show. Is that what you wanted to close with here today?
Exactly right. This is so important for all our technology companies to understand. The way that you get into the military supply chain up in Fayetteville is that you attend these conferences, because the large prime contractors use this on August 5th. They're going to be talking with small technology companies about becoming a subprime contractor to the big prime contractors. That kind of business networking is essential for bringing our little companies into the military supply chain up in Fayetteville.
Part of that ripple effect. 13th Annual North Carolina Defense and Economic Development Trade Show. I believe it's there at the Convention Center off of Bragg, Fayetteville, North Carolina, on August 5th. And again, they walk you through. I've been there, and actually I think I broadcast there a couple years ago. What they do is they walk you through all the steps necessary, all the paperwork necessary to have yourself approved to be in the supply chain, as Thomas said. So it's a very, very important. It goes on every year. It's a very important trade show. So mark that on your calendar, August 5th in Fayetteville. If you'd like to get into this supply chain and be part of that positive ripple effect. Thank you, Thomas.
Great.
And don't forget, folks, check your Facebook page. Join us there at Cape Fear Capital Connections. And all of these slides and notes are up there, this information. And, of course, this segment is also posted on our live stream virtual channel. I'm Curtis Wright. We'll be right back.